I still remember the first day I stepped into my husband's house as a bride. The walls were tall, the rooms wide, but the air felt tight, like it didn't want me there. My mother-in-law stood at the center of the living room, arms crossed, eyes scanning me from head to toe. Not with curiosity, but judgment. That was the moment I knew I would never be enough for her. At first, her cruelty was quiet. Small comments slipped into conversations like hidden thorns. "You grew up very simply, didn't you? In our family, women usually don't work like that. My son could have married better, but fate is strange." I smiled through it all. I told myself she would change. I told myself love required patience. Aaron, my husband, always said, "She's just old-fashioned, don't take it to heart." And I believed him, because believing him was easier than facing the truth. But patience has a limit, and respect, once broken, does not grow back. Months passed, and the insults became sharper. She criticized the way I cooked, the way I dressed, even the way I spoke. When relatives visited, she made sure to remind them how much my parents couldn't give during the wedding. Each word chipped away at me, but I stayed silent, clinging to the hope that my marriage was worth the pain. That night, everything collapsed. It started with an argument, one I didn't even begin. She accused me of stealing money from the kitchen drawer. I was shocked, humiliated. I would never do that. I said, my voice trembling. She laughed. "People like you always say that." I looked at Aaron, waiting for him to defend me. He didn't. He stared at his phone, avoiding my eyes, as if my dignity was an inconvenience. Something broke inside me. "I have given this family nothing but respect," I said quietly. "If you don't trust me, then tell me to my face." She disappeared into the storeroom and came back dragging a large black trash bag. Without hesitation, she threw it at me. It hit my shoulder and fell to the floor with a dull, heavy thud. "Here," she said coldly, "take your trash and leave. That's all you brought into this house." The room went silent. I felt every pair of eyes on me burning with shame. My hands shook, my chest tightened, but no tears came. Not yet. I bent down, picked up the bag, and stood there for a moment waiting, foolishly, for my husband to say something. He didn't. That silence hurt more than the bag ever could. I walked out of the house with nothing but that trash bag and the clothes I was wearing. Rain poured down like the sky itself was grieving for me. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if my heart was dragging my body forward. I kept asking myself one question over and over. How did love bring me here? At a small rented room on the edge of the city, I locked the door and collapsed onto the floor. The bag lay beside me, a symbol of everything they thought I was: worthless, disposable, unwanted. With trembling hands, I reached for the knot at the top. I didn't know it yet, but the moment I opened that trash bag, my life and their secrets were about to change forever. The room smelled of damp walls and loneliness. A single yellow bulb flickered above me as rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers. I sat on the floor, staring at the trash bag for a long time, as if it might bite me if I touched it. My hands still shook from everything that had happened, the accusations, the silence, the way I had been erased in a single night. Finally, I loosened the knot. I expected to see old clothes, maybe broken kitchen tools, things they no longer needed, things that matched how they saw me. Instead, the bag fell open with a soft rustle, and what I saw stole the air from my lungs. Bundles of cash, neatly stacked, wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with rubber bands. One bundle became two, two became many. I pushed the bag wider, my heart pounding so loudly I thought the neighbors might hear it. My fingers brushed the notes, half expecting them to vanish like a cruel joke. They didn't. I counted once, then again, then a third time, tears blurring my vision. $500,000. I stumbled back against the wall, my mind spinning. This wasn't possible. Aaron had always said we were struggling. He complained about expenses, about loans, about how we had to be careful. And yet this kind of money had been sitting somewhere in that house, hidden, silent, powerful. As I reached the bottom of the bag, my hand touched something else. Paper, folded, worn, intentional. I opened it slowly. This is not trash. This is my burden. My son ruined you, and I helped him by staying silent. Take this and leave before he destroys what little of you is left. My chest tightened as if an invisible hand had wrapped itself around my heart. So she knew about the lies. About the late nights, about the woman whose name I once saw flash across Aaron's phone before he snatched it away. Every doubt I had ever swallowed now rose like a scream inside my head. I laughed then, soft, broken, almost hysterical. All those months I had begged for honesty, for respect, for protection from my own husband, and the truth had been sitting inside a trash bag. Anger followed quickly after the shock. Hot, burning, unstoppable. She had watched me suffer. She had let her son humiliate me, drain me, weaken me. And when her guilt finally grew too loud, she didn't apologize. She threw it at me. I cried until my throat ached. But beneath the tears, something else began to form, clarity. This money wasn't kindness. It was confession. And confessions have power. By morning, the storm outside had passed, but the storm inside me had settled into something sharp and focused. I washed my face, made a list, and began planning for the first time in years, not around my husband, not around his family, but around me. I opened a new bank account in my name only. I contacted a lawyer. I booked an appointment I had postponed for years. Each step felt terrifying and liberating all at once, like learning to walk again after being bound. That afternoon, Aaron called. "Where did you go?" he asked, irritation thick in his voice. "My mother says you overreacted." I looked at the trash bag, now empty, folded neatly in the corner. "I left," I said calmly, "and I'm not coming back." There was silence on the other end this time. For the first time, I was the one holding it. As I ended the call, I realized something important. They thought they had thrown me away. What they didn't know was that they had handed me the very thing that would save me. And one day, remind them of everything they tried to bury. The trash bag wasn't the end, it was the beginning. Once the shock faded, the memories returned, slow at first, then all at once. Moments I had ignored, explained away, or blamed on my own insecurity, suddenly rearranged themselves into something undeniable. The truth had always been there, I just hadn't been allowed to see it clearly. Aaron's late nights were no longer just work pressure. The sudden password changes on his phone weren't about privacy. The way money disappeared while he claimed we were drowning in expenses. It all pointed to the same betrayal. And his mother had known worse. She had helped him hide it. I met with the lawyer 2 days later. Sitting in that quiet office, I spoke without crying for the first time. I told him everything. The emotional neglect, the financial lies, the humiliation, the night I was thrown out like waste. When I mentioned the money, he raised his eyebrows but said nothing, simply nodding as he took notes. "You have more power than you think," he said gently. "Use it wisely." Power, the word felt strange in my mouth. For so long, I had been surviving. Now I was choosing. As the legal process began, I started uncovering more secrets. Bank statements revealed accounts in Aaron's name I had never seen, transfers to numbers that weren't family. One name appeared again and again, a woman from his office. The confirmation hurt, but it no longer surprised me. The pain was cleaner now, stripped of confusion. What broke me wasn't the affair. It was the realization that I had been planned around. My suffering had been managed, controlled. His mother's coldness, her constant attempts to shrink me, suddenly made sense. If I felt small enough, I would never question why I had nothing. Late one evening, I received a message from her. "I hope you're safe. Don't involve outsiders. This can end quietly, quietly, as if my life had been a mess they could simply tidy up." I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote my own timeline. I documented every insult, every denial, every moment Aaron chose silence over me. Writing it down hurt, but it also freed me. My story finally belonged to me. The divorce papers were delivered a week later. Aaron showed up outside my building that same night. He looked angry, confused, afraid. All emotions I had carried for him while he stood untouched. "You blindsided me," he said, "after everything my mother did for you." I laughed softly. "You mean after everything she hid for you?" His face drained of color. That was the moment he knew. The truth had reached him, not through shouting or revenge, but through certainty. I wasn't asking, I wasn't begging, I knew. He tried to explain, he always did. But explanations sound hollow when trust is already buried. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, "and yet," I replied, "you built a life that required it." When he left, I didn't feel victory. I felt release. Days turned into weeks. I moved into a brighter apartment. I enrolled in courses I had once dreamed of. I woke up without fear. Each small step stitched something inside me back together. The woman I was becoming no longer needed answers from them. Their secrets had lost their grip on me. Still, sometimes I thought of my mother, in love, the note of the guilt that finally cracked her cruelty. She had chosen silence for years, then confession at the end. It didn't excuse her, but it explained her. The truth had changed everything, not because it destroyed them, but because it returned me to myself. And that, I realized, was the beginning of something they could never control again. Success arrived quietly, the way real healing does. There was no dramatic announcement, no moment where the world stopped to applaud me. It came in early mornings, steady decisions, and the peace of knowing I answered to no one but myself. I built my life brick by brick, education first, then a small business, then independence so solid it no longer trembled at the sound of their names. I stopped waiting for apologies. Time passed, nearly 2 years, long enough for wounds to scar over, long enough for my reflection to look like someone I respected. The woman who once carried a trash bag in the rain felt like a distant memory, real, but no longer painful. Then the call came. It was Aaron. His voice was softer now, worn down by consequences he never believed would arrive. "My mother is sick," he said. "She keeps asking for you." I hesitated, not because I feared them, but because I feared reopening doors I had worked so hard to close. Still, something inside me whispered that this chapter deserved an ending. The house looked smaller when I returned. The walls that once felt oppressive now seemed fragile. Power changes perspective like that. She lay in bed, thinner, quieter, her sharp eyes dulled by regret. When she saw me, tears filled them instantly. "I tried to break you," she whispered, "because I was afraid of losing my son, afraid of the truth." I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. She spoke of guilt, of sleepless nights, of the money she had hidden like a sin she couldn't erase. For the first time, she wasn't towering over me. She was simply human. "I'm sorry," she said. The words trembled as if they had waited years to be spoken. I reached into my bag and placed something on the bedside table. The black trash bag. Inside it was empty, except for a framed copy of her handwritten note. "I don't need your money anymore," I said gently, "but I needed you to see what that night did to me and what it gave me." She cried openly then. Not the dramatic tears of manipulation, but the quiet grief of someone who finally understood. Aaron stood in the doorway, silent as always. He looked at me the way people look at something they once owned and no longer recognize. There was longing in his eyes. Regret too late, I turned to him. This is where our story ends. No anger, no accusations, just truth. As I walked away, I felt no urge to look back. Revenge, I had learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it lives in the life you build when no one is trying to destroy you anymore. Months later, I received a letter. She had passed peacefully. In it, she thanked me for my silence, my strength, my forgiveness. She wrote that throwing that bag at me was the cruelest act of her life and the most honest. I folded the letter and placed it beside the note. They once tried to throw me away. Instead, they handed me my freedom. And that was my revenge. Not their suffering, but my survival.